Hello friends, and welcome back to Psalm 23. I'm Kevin and I'm on the groups team here at Parkview, and we are past the halfway point of our time together. I know that God has been at work in your conversations and hopefully in your lives as well. Now this week we're moving on to verse 4, and I've got another very special guest here to share some stories with us.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Kevin. I'm Adam Ader. I'm on the groups team here. I've been around Parkview way longer than I care to admit. I'm married to a beautiful woman named Becca. I got two gorgeous daughters named Nora and Lucy.
Okay, now Adam, I've got a question for you that I know everyone's asking themselves right now. You struck me as the kind of guy who had a nickname growing up. Tell us what that nickname was.
Honestly, Kevin, you're wrong. I did not have a nickname. But as a young man, I was desperate for a nickname. And I even cooked one up for myself that nobody ever used, right?
Except when he looked in the mirror. That was your nickname.
Yes, that was me. I was desperate to be known as Mad Max.
Okay.
As a young boy. So,
is there a reason for this?
I mean, I don't know. I think I saw the movie, like the Thunderdome thing, and I just thought it sounded tough and manly, and like nobody would mess with me if I was known as Mad Max.
Well, it sounds like what I'm hearing is that Adam needs a nickname. So everyone, go ahead and drop a nickname for Adam in the comments section of this video.
Be nice.
Because I was not expecting that answer. All right, in the meantime, we're gonna get into our teaching time from Matt Chandler. So let's get to it.
Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. In 2003, I became the pastor of the Village Church in Dallas, Texas, and I was ill-prepared for the level of suffering and death and difficulty that I experienced early on as a young pastor. I intellectually knew that people got sick. I intellectually knew people got in accidents. I knew that funerals happened. And yet it wasn't until that moment that I had a front row seat to the heartbreak that can follow humankind through the world. And so this psalm makes me appreciate the Bible. And what I mean by that is that the Bible never tries to lie to us. It never tries to paint a picture of reality that's inconsistent with our experience. And so we've just come off, some really beautiful truths about the provision of God, the care of God, God desiring to usher us into peace, the righteousness that God gives our innermost being. And then it takes a turn, but it's not so far as a turn as you might think. It starts with, even though I walk, so it's assumed that you're going to walk, I'm going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And so there's been some arguments theologically throughout Christian history about, is this death itself that we're talking about? And then there's a whole group of people says, well, no, it's not death, it's the shadow of death, and the shadow can't be the thing. It's a shadow of the thing. And so really I don't feel like we have to choose here. This could be death itself, staring death in the face with an illness. This could be a tragic act. This could be death itself. But more than likely, this is dark night of the soul. This is extremely difficult season of life. This is a spell of hopelessness. This is that kind of where are you, God moment. And we know that David has those moments. In fact, more than I think any person I have personally met, I read David have that moment over and over and over again, where he says, where are you, O God? Will you forsake me forever? How long, O Lord? It seems like to David, he always feels like he's in this spot of the valley. And so really the thing that the passage teaches us is that ultimately, because you will and because I will, if we live long enough, find ourselves in the valley of the shadow of death, that we're encouraged that we have not been abandoned to that. In fact, there are two things meant to help us as we navigate the valley that are found in this passage. The first is that it's not that we're just going to be pulled right out of the valley. If you look back at the passage, it says that I will fear no evil. So now we're about to hear something that's going to help us not be afraid of the valley. That doesn't mean we enjoy the valley. It just means that we're not afraid of the valley. It doesn't even mean that we're not anxious about the possibility of the valley. It just means that while we're in that valley, we're not going to live by fear. So the next sentence, it's probably going to be pretty powerful. It should be pretty significant if the promise we're about to get means that we'll be able to live in the valley without fear. Here's what he says. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Now, this takes us back to John 10. And in John 10, Jesus says those other shepherds, those other voices, those other leaders, whether it be our inner compulsions, whether it be our culture, whether it be other people, that when the wolves come, when death, pain, sorrow, violence, when it comes, they will flee, they will run, they will abandon us, they will leave us. But Jesus, the Good Shepherd, He will not leave us. And so the promise we get here is not a life without pain. It's that in our pain, regardless of what that pain is, He will be with us, which means if you've come to session today, if you're sitting and this is the darkest moment of your life and you feel forgotten, you feel like somehow you have done something that cancels out the imputed righteousness of Christ, that God has turned His attention to something else. I just want to encourage you with the Word of God. You have not been forgotten. He is with you in this valley, in this shadow of death. He is beside you. He is with you. That's the promise that we get. All other leaders, all other shepherds will abandon us in this moment. If you think about it, if you believe that just having enough money is what's finally going to satisfy your soul, what happens in the valley of the shadow of death when you can't buy your way out? Well, what happens is the confidence in that shepherd, the shepherd of wealth, the shepherd of control, it vanishes, and there you are, all by yourself with no one to console, to comfort, to be with you. And yet Jesus is saying, I'm not like wealth. I'm not even like you trying to control your own physical health. Right? There's not enough spinach and blueberries on planet Earth. There's not enough yoga and workout strategies on Earth that'll save you from the day of trouble. And in that day, if you've built your life around, I'm going to so take care of myself physically. I'm going to wipe essential oils on my feet. I'm going to eat all that is good and righteous and organic. And when that day, what are you left with? But Jesus is saying, I will never leave you. It does not matter what difficulty befalls you. I am not going anywhere. In the darkest moment of your life, if you look up, who will be there is the Good Shepherd, Jesus Christ. But that's not all that's going on in this text. If we keep reading, it's not just that He is with us, but the next phrase says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So in the valley of the shadow of death, we're guaranteed a couple of things. One, that He is with us and that He is there to comfort us. Now that's good news too, because if Jesus is with us in the valley of the shadow of death, only to kind of recount how we did something wrong to get ourselves there, then man, that's not comfort. But Jesus, the Bible's saying Jesus is there not just to be with you, but to bring comfort to you. And the way that He does that is with the rod and the staff. In some translations, these are actually one thing. If you look at it, they're more than likely two things. The rod was like a small club that the shepherd would use to defend the sheep from an oncoming attack from a wolf or some other creature, predator that was trying to attack the sheep. So the staff and the rod were not the same thing. The staff was more used to navigate the sheep through difficult terrain. And so David is writing in Psalm 23 that in the valley of the shadow of death, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, will fight for you. This is how we're comforted. He's going to fight for us while guiding us through the difficult terrain. He has not abandoned us to navigate ourselves through the bleakness of the valley of the shadow of death. He is with us. He is comforting us. He is defending us, and He is leading us through. We have not been abandoned. God never wastes a tear. He never wastes any loneliness, hurt, or despair. He shapes us with it. He molds us with it. He guides us with us. He makes us more than we ever thought we could be in the valley of the shadow of death. Now, that leads me to the question that I think you have to answer if you're in the middle of it right now. Are you in this season of difficulty, in this valley of the shadow of death? Are you turning to Jesus, the Good Shepherd, for your comfort? Or have you run to other devices? Are you checking out? Are you running to alcohol? Are you running to food? Are you running to pornography? Are you running to inappropriate relationships? Are you running to these other places to find comfort when the comfort that your soul most desperately needs is not found in those things, but is found in the presence of Jesus? Listen, I am not a stranger to loss. I am not a stranger to hurt. I'm not a stranger to betrayal. I'm personally not a stranger to having a doctor sit across from me and tell me I'll be dead in a couple of years. And yet in those seasons of despair, Jesus draws nearer to the sheep, and he's drawn near not to lecture, not to say how you should have done this differently, but he draws near to bring comfort by leading, guiding, and defending. So I want to encourage you, specifically encourage you, if this is that season for you. And if not, I'm just asking that the Holy Spirit nestle this down deep into your heart so that when the day comes, you'll be ready for it. There is a grotesque kind of insidious prosperity gospel nonsense that can take root in our hearts without us knowing it. We can begin to believe that if I'm just good, if I just do what's right, then nothing difficult's ever going to befall my life. I just want to say to you with great empathy that it's simply not true. You and I will, in different seasons, at different times, enter into this valley that almost all of us would rather not be in, and yet He will be with us, He will protect us, He will guide us, He will get us through it.
Man, life is made up of all kinds of peaks and valleys, but from my experience, when we're in the valley, it's kind of hard to remember the peaks from the past or even think that there will be another high point again. Adam, do you have any words for people that are going through that valley today?
Yeah, Kevin. It's interesting because I have a very specific image in mind when I hear this verse. Maybe I watched too many movies, but the image that comes to mind is of the righteous warrior like walking into battle to fight on the front lines for the cause of good. Russell Crowe stepping into the arena, Mel Gibson leading men into battle, Coolio surviving high school in Dangerous Minds, right? In reality though, in my own life, the valleys usually look a lot less epic and feel a lot more soul-sucking. So as I watched the teaching video, there's a theme and a time in my life that kept coming to mind, but it wasn't really the one that I wanted to share with you about. But it kept popping up, so I suppose I should listen. For those of you who don't know me well, I did ministry here at Parkview with teenagers for 13 years before joining the groups team. Let me tell you, student ministry can be fun, it can be inspiring, but it can also be absolutely infuriating, and sometimes it can be downright heartbreaking. A few years into my time in students, there was a student that I was close to who died in a car accident. This was a kid I had laughed with, who I'd led worship with, who I'd had hard conversations with, and his life had been cut so short, way too early. Now, as a red-blooded, meat-eating, football-watching, beer-drinking man, I did what I'd been conditioned to do. I swallowed my feelings, and I did what I had to do. I led this kid's memorial service. I did my best to help his family and his friends grieve, and I tried to move on. But over the next few months, I slid into what I would have called a valley of my own. I found myself getting angry very easily, and there were times where I felt an exhaustion that just didn't even make sense. Eventually, it poured out onto my family. It affected the way I did ministry, and I wasn't talking about it to anyone. Too much pride. I felt like I had to be the one to walk with other people through their valleys. I couldn't possibly be someone who was living there myself. Now, who knows how long I would have wallowed like that if it wasn't for a close friend who knew me well enough to see that something was eating me from the inside. He approached me, and in the conversation, he said something to me that made a difference and really has kind of stuck with me to this day. He said, "Before you can get back on your feet, you have to actually decide to get back on your feet. Right? Sounds pretty obvious, right? It sounds pretty bonehead simple. And of course, I didn't want to keep living that way. But it got through my thick skull in a way that nothing else had, because it made me admit that I couldn't get back up. I couldn't climb out of that valley on my own. And if I were to actually decide to climb out of that grave that I was living in, it meant that my pain and my despair needed to be laid at the foot of the cross. It meant acknowledging that I needed a shepherd to lead, guide, and defend me because my own strength was insufficient. That idea made all the difference for me. I'd been pointing others to the cross the best I could for a long time, but I was unwilling to truly accept that God, the creator of heaven and earth, the Alpha, the Omega, was willing to be with me in my hurt. That he was near to me and just waiting for me to accept his invitation to walk hand in hand through the valley of the shadow of death. And that ended up making all the difference for me, Kevin.
Man, I cannot thank you enough for sharing that with us. I know that there are people watching here right now who are in their own valley, and I hope hearing those words from you can help us on that journey together. I know that you've all got a lot to talk about tonight, so without further ado, let's get into it.